Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Women's Founders Day. Today we will be focusing on entrepreneurship. We are here for Women's History Month, and we want to celebrate us as women, especially women of color who are doing our thing and representing our people. So I just want to introduce and announce our speakers for the day. We will have Sharnetta Sharkey David, who is the director of the Forward Thinkers and founder and CEO of Connect Collab. We will also have Francilia Wilkins-Rahim, who is the CEO and founder of RFW Consultants, as well as Kecia Palmer Cousins, the founder of Era by Soul Incorporated. We are coming to you from Urban Legacy Foundation, where our three pillars are STEM, entrepreneurship, and ownership. We understand that this is a necessity in our people, and it is necessary for us to focus on these areas now so that we can ensure a bright and healthy future for our youth and for society as a whole. Again, we are here to lay down our hair. We are here to celebrate you, and we are so grateful to have our guest. And the first guest that we will start with is Francilia Wilkins-Rahim, who will be interviewed by Jalen Gardner, one of our Urban Legacy team members. Thank you, everyone, and welcome.
Hi, how are you? Oh, I can't hear you.
I said, I'm excellent. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing super well. It's so great seeing you, and it's so amazing having you here. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Of course, it is my pleasure. I'm excited, to celebrate Women's History Month with you all, and just have a great chat.
No, yeah, definitely. So, as a woman founder, what made you get into your field? Like, was it like, did it come from your parents, or did it, just come from within? Did you like in school? So
interesting. So I'm going to, some people may know my company and most people probably don't. So maybe I'll start with a little story of how it started, and then hopefully that'll lend to the answer. Yeah. So I actually started my firm, R. Wilkins Consultants, in 2011. And I had just finished my MBA at St. John's University. And I will tell you, it was not my plan to start a business right away. Like, I knew I wanted to, in time, start a company, but I had planned to do what everyone does. So you go to school, you get your degree, get your second or third degree, whatever degrees you need, and then you work for a large Fortune 500, Fortune 100 firm. And then from there, you can start your own business. That was the plan. But I just so happened to finish my MBA in 2011, which for those of you who remember, that was like in the midst of like the worst recession ever. You couldn't pay someone to hire you. You couldn't pay someone to give you a job. It was just really tough out there. So I just remember thinking, and I want to say this joke, but I don't know how many little kids are on the screen, so I won't say it. But I just remember thinking my options were like pretty limited. Like, I need to figure this thing out. So that's when I literally started sharing with people. I knew I was always good. And this is from young, from like high school, elementary school, middle school. I was always like the person planning and putting things together, and project management. That was like my thing. I could raise money, always good at that. And so I remember going online and just kind of Google researching and figuring out like, what can I do right now with these skill sets? And I found there was this website. This is no joke. There was this website. It still exists. If you go online right now, A2Z, I think it's like A2Z Careers or something like that. And it's a government website. And it tells you every single career and a description around it. So, and it gives you like what type of person and experience this person should have. So I just knew that I wanted to be a business development consultant, right? I just knew. And so, I started just saying, I didn't have a job at this time. I am an independent business development consultant. That's what I started saying. So I remember getting a call from a friend, and he was like, hey, aren't you an independent business development consultant? And I was like, hey, I am. And he said, my father has a nonprofit organization, and they're looking to figure out how to expand the business, raise money, and all of that. And so I ended up taking that entity on as my first client. And now 10 years later, because February makes it 10 years, R. Wilkins Consultants is a business development and management consulting firm. So what does that mean, and what do we do? Yes. We help bring a number of different projects to fruition. We do so by leveraging project management. We've managed over 300 projects. Our clients have ranged from companies like Google to the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, where we are the compliance manager on the $17 billion redevelopment of JFK Airport, to New Rochelle. The city of New Rochelle is a client. And we leverage project management to aid in compliance work, meaning kind of monitoring MWBE programs. We leverage project management to create programs for minorities and the workforce. And we also, leveraging that same project management scope, work in the fundraising space. So we raise money for projects. To date, we've raised close to $900 million across a number of projects throughout the state. And then finally, technology systems integration, all under that project management map. So when a company or a government agency has technologies or systems that don't function properly, we saw that with COVID as an example. A lot of schools and things stopped working. We're able to look at their systems and make it kind of work effectively to bring projects forward. So that's the work that we do. And what made me inspired to do this, I've always been a very kind of independent person. I knew that actually when I was young, I used to just say, I just want to wear skirt suits. Like that was my thing. What I wanted to be when I grow, I want to wear skirt suits. I'll tell you, I wear skirt suits and dresses almost every day. And it's been a really great experience. I love the work that we do. And I started, as an individual, and now my firm has over 7 full-time staff, 13 project-based staff. And American Express has a report out about women-owned businesses. And in this report, they say that there's only 1.7% of women-owned businesses in the United States that make over $1 million in revenue. And then it's about 2% of businesses make about $500,000 in revenue. Yeah. And for Black women-owned businesses, only 0.01% of them are in that $1 million. 0.0, not even a whole one.
Wow. That's really crazy.
Right. And so we, being able to say that we're in that range now, from starting a business as a young person and literally having no money, it's just something that I really love and I love to do and support, people who look like me. So that's kind of why I started. I wanted to wear skirt suits. So
no, that's amazing. You know what? You dress for the future that you want. Okay. Right. And I also love that, that you're making history, because you're in the forefront of this, because you've been doing it for 10 years. And I also love the fact that like someone goes, oh, like, so this is what you do. And you were like, yeah, that's actually what I do.
Right. Yes.
And that's such a beautiful and inspiring thing because, it's funny because I'm kind of like getting into consulting. So definitely after this, we need to talk some more. And, someone said to me, they were like, oh, so you do like consultation work, like you connect the dots. And I was just like, yes, I do that. I was like, I do. And, no, but that is so amazing. Have you seen an influx of women in your industry or like even in your clientele would be better? Would you see an influx?
So it's so interesting, right? First of all, I haven't seen too many companies other than like the Deloittes of the world, like the larger Accentures who do the type of work that we do. So the first thing I would definitely encourage, I guess this work is unique because it's a lot of project management and a lot of strategy work and then actual development. So I haven't seen too many just firms in this space, first of all, that are smaller businesses. A lot of the work that we do is in the construction industry. And so like I mentioned, the JFK project, New Rochelle project, we do a lot of work in the construction and development space. Are there a lot of women there? Has there been an influx? I don't know if I would call it an influx, but I think that there are more women working in this space. I think women are being more recognized who are in this space and who work across the construction and development industry. I think that right now, especially, we're seeing that it no longer has to be like a guy thing. Like it just when you think construction, you only think about people, guys in hard hats, and there's so many different ways you could play in the space. So I guess I would say yes. I wouldn't say influx, but I would say that the space is definitely diversifying, and more women are entering the space.
No, yeah, because it's so funny because I've seen a lot of women. Even in my own friend group, in my own circle, have seen a lot of women actually start their own businesses, get their LLCs and do those things, which is such a beautiful thing to see. And, especially because there's so many new businesses out there and new business owners, it would be great for them to, have a person like you, have a person like you that like will help them actually grow and be more than they think they can even be. Because end of the day, that's what people come to you for, you know,
Right.
is to be better than they were yesterday.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So,
oh,
you
go
go.
ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying. Do you remember a moment that was, I don't want to say like stressful, because like, you know, running a business is stressful, but a moment where you were like, okay, I don't know what I should be doing, but what was the thing that like carried you through? Or
Got it. I think I heard you properly. I think you said, "Do I remember a moment that was like really stressful, or I didn't know how to get through it?" I think you broke out a little bit, but did I get that question right?
yes, you did.
Okay, perfect. So, yes. First of all, I would say a lot of the work we do is in government contracting. And it is tough to access government contracts. It is tough to do anything around government contract. And I'd love to share any tips I can with you all for how to go about that space. But
Yeah.
I just remember, and it was a few years back, I'm not going to go into details because the story is so long, but I remember I had a client. The client is still my client today, and they were actually my second client, and they've literally been with us for 9 years now. And we had won probably, I think the total contract amount for the two programs were like about like $75 million, right? So we had won $75 million contract to house people in homeless shelters in the city. And this had been my client for a while. We've already won a number of different shelter contracts with them, but this contract was new. It was to manage some commercial sites and stuff like that. So long and short of it is we started doing the work. We're housing folk. We hired 200 and something different people. And then the city came out with another bid, and it was something that they wanted us, everybody who was doing the work, no matter if you were doing the work or not, to submit. Now, I didn't know that everyone had to submit until probably a week or two before, because initially we were informed, like, you guys don't have to worry about it. You're already in it.
Of course.
So long and short of it, at that time, I had to submit for that client and another client at the same time. And these bids are like 300-page books.
Yeah.
And this was at a period when I didn't have full tight ship of staff like I do now. And I just remember we did not get this bid in on time. And that was the first and last time that experience ever happened. But let me tell you, we were informed that everything will be fine. You guys will be good. You're already working on the project. And like 3 months later, we get a call and they're like, we need to shut down your sites, my client sites, because you guys did not submit a bid. So what did that mean? That means that the 230 people we hired were all going to lose their job. And I took that to heart. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I can't even express to you how down I was, because I felt like the client they're going to lose this whole big bunch of millions of dollars. All of these people are going to lose their jobs. And I felt like it was all my fault. I was like, this is all my freaking fault. How did this happen? It was devastating. So I just remember I remember like laying in the tub for like 4 hours or something, just so devastated. And then the next day I had to speak on a panel. And so I got out of bed, spoke on the panel, whatever, and literally spent the next month closing out on that project and transitioning it out. And so we had to fire all the folk. We worked with them to transition into other companies, the other company who took the project. I went to every site individually and spoke. I went on behalf of my client. I spoke to my client. I just kept it together, even though I was in shambles. And I will tell you today, the client is still a client. And they have been the most supportive client. And we recently just won them another $3 million contract. We won a few others before that. So I will say that was a very difficult experience, but it was a learning experience. And that experience pivoted my entire company. Because since then, I said, forget this. We need to hire people. And that's number one advice I would give for anybody who's entrepreneurial. I remember one time I had met who was then the first Black CEO of McDonald's. And he said to me, I was so young in business, and he was like, you need to have people. And then that incident happened right after. And it told me this whole, in the kind of company that I wanted to have, it would not work to be an independent freelancer type of person. We needed staff, we needed back office, we needed capital, we needed capacity, we needed to train people, we needed to make sure efficiencies were in place. And from there, I built a foundation that I promise you today is unbreakable. And so that was the lesson that I learned at that point, which was probably the lowest, to this day, the lowest point in my professional career. But it was probably the most needed, because I learned a lesson that if I had to learn that today, it could be, crises. So
yeah. So, the still in the pan, the real off of the thing we're dealing with. Oh man, this is terrible. But, you were like, you didn't just give up. You didn't just give up on the project, but you couldn't, because you had clients. But it was really amazing. That is an amazing story. And also, if that client wasn't a client after that, or didn't want to continue to be a client, that just wouldn't make any sense, because of the fact that you really pulled it together, though.
Well, I'll tell you this, it would have made sense, because business is business and money is money. Okay. In the world of business, it is business. Mm-hmm. And I think that I would have felt like they had all right, even though mm-hmm. the incident, it wasn't something that any one of us could control, because we all were informed of the same thing, that we didn't have to submit the proposal. But I look at it in the world of business. It really truly is business, and there's no shade. If they were like, we can't afford to work with you anymore, I would have been like, understood, even though it was something a little bit out of my control. I feel mm-hmm. like there was still areas where I can control it. And I guess that the second piece of advice I would give for budding entrepreneurs is, it's your business, you're accountable. And that's something that we all have to learn and digest the hard way sometimes, but you are accountable as the owner of your business. You're accountable if your staff make an error. You're accountable if you make an error. You're accountable if there's an error that wasn't really made and the client thinks is an error. You are accountable. No one else is. And you, as a business owner, CEO, you take on the responsibility of being accountable, because whatever work you do is impacting other people, or in my case, other businesses.
No, that's honestly such a big thing, especially with, a lot of people have, they've been trying to grow their businesses. And I feel like that accountability is definitely one of the bigger issues, because when people feel like things are out of their control, that is it, But also I feel like another thing that's out of people's control, well, actually, this is very much so in their control, is their customer service. And right. You also did that, like, above and beyond, because you really nailed that whole situation. Like, because I'm literally thinking about how I would handle that situation, and I would be like, oh my gosh, where's my mother? Where's Dr. Gardner? Because she would know how to handle it, and then we would figure it out. But, that's really amazing that, like, you just really, like, it didn't make you quit, or it didn't make you just took what you learned from that, you got your staff together, and you just pushed forward, and now you are where you are, which is so amazing. Yeah, I have another question for you about whether or not there are, especially like Black women of color, like like Black women or like women of color, do you feel like they reach out to you a lot?
I do. I definitely do. I think that I've had the opportunity to, one, sit on a lot of different panels, but create a lot of programs and initiatives. A lot of the work, the foundation of the work we do is inclusion. Mm-hmm. So I love that everyone's talking DEI and all of that now, but, and it needs to continue. But I think we work with a lot of government programs that are now too focused on this. We've worked with the city, just kind of defining policy on the state level and city level in New York. Mm-hmm. around inclusion and diversity. And I think that because of that, even a few years back, a few years now, 2 years, we worked with Google to help create an initiative for minority businesses through the Google Digital Culture Initiative, which is great. And I would advise anybody to participate in that. But there were so many minority and women, African-American business owners who had access, and I tried to connect back as much as I can, and mentor back. I always say I wish I had more mentorship throughout my process. Today, there's two people who I always give a shout out to that I see, and it's no formal relationship. Like there's no signed dotted line contract that's like, you're my mentor, I'm your mentee. Okay, like there's none of that. But I always, say Cheryl McKissick. I feel like she really breathed into me and my career. She owns the company McKissick & McKissick and is one of the oldest African-American architectural companies. And then a woman, Patience Ameniki, who was a client and now is a friend and a mentor. And she's poured so much into me and my business. And those two African-American women, poured into me. So I try to pour back as much as I can, because I just look back and I'm like, gosh, if I had these people at the front end of my career, things might have grown a lot faster, but with having the mentorship and that type of support and just somebody you could, throw advice to, it's really been helpful. And then I think mentorship is a two-way streak, because you learn from each other, right? And as a mentee, I always say, like, the goal isn't what can I get. Like, can I get more of your time and more of your this and more of your that? It's really more like, how can I give back to you too and pour into you also? As it's this kind of like, symbiotic relationship, like two-way streak. And I think that's where mentorship works well. And yes, I open myself up to a lot of African-American women, and just women period and people period, to reach out for that type of support.
No, that's beautiful, because I feel like mentorship, honestly, even talking about what a good mentee is so important, because even when I was looking for a mentor, I was like, okay, like, I'm like, okay, this is supposed to be like a dotted line thing, like, like it's official, but also I needed to figure out what also I can bring to the table and help them with. But it was amazing talking to you.
You too. Thank you so much.
I'm definitely going to reach out to you.
Definitely. I hope to hear all the wonderful fruits that are coming from all the other speakers coming up. And this has been so great and excellent. And just kudos to Urban Legacy and all the work that you all are doing. So kudos to the organization.
No, thank you so much. And we can't wait to do future things with you and all of that good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so for our next speaker of the evening, we're going to have Sharnetta Sharkey David, who will be interviewed by Shivi Jane, another one of our Urban Legacy team members. Hey, girl.
Hello. I'm super excited to be here and to talk with Sharkey David, the Director of Innovation at the Forward Thinkers facility and the founder of CEO Connect Co Lab. So my first question for you is, can you describe what Connect Co Lab does, and how did you know that this is what you wanted to do? I think you're muted.
Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity, Shivi. We had the pleasure of meeting a few days ago, and it was an honor to talk to you then. And I just wanted to thank the two women who shared prior. It was amazing just listening and sharing and reflecting as you spoke and shared. And I think that type of exchange is so powerful. And I'm so grateful that we're taking this moment. Thank you to Shane, who is organizing all of this and allowing for us to just create a platform to be able to exchange ideas and share real stories, share true stories about why we're on this journey and what's keeping us motivated on this journey. So thank you. And yes, I'm happy to talk about the Connect Collab. So Connect Collab was founded or launched in December 2019. And the Connect Collab is a networking and consulting group that exists to curate genuine connections and build real and within communities that really need support. I always thought about how a lot of times when we say networking as a first generation college student, what is networking? Who taught me to network? I watched my mother work 3 jobs at one point, and I don't think networking was one of those things that she prioritized. And I even thought about networking becoming really essential to me when I transitioned to Massachusetts and became a new mom. So it went from being a extracurricular activity, something that I dabbled in, to something that I actually needed to make the connections that were necessary for me to find employment, find opportunities, to be able to even launch Connect. But there was also this recreation piece around networking that I think a lot of times women and women of color in particular, I don't know if we were always invited to the country clubs or those poker nights, and figuring out where business deals were actually happening, whether it was the golf course or whether it was those invitations to those parties that we didn't always get invitations to. So I really started thinking about an inclusion model within the networking experience that really allowed for different personalities to be able to form meaningful relationships, to actually do business, not just socialize. And I see the country clubs. I'm sorry. Also to be able to form those connections that were essential to lay the foundation to actually do business. And I think a lot of times we were kept out of those conversations, and I didn't necessarily see it modeled for me. And as an educator, I started thinking, what happens in networking spaces? And for the past year and almost a half, I've been bringing that to market alongside my co-founder, who's brilliant, and I've known for over 15 years, and really starting to think about what is needed in our community and what types of engines do we need to create to allow for those types of exchanges and to facilitate that type of support, so that we can do business together, so that we can grow companies, so that we can bring ideas to life.
That's awesome. I love that. And that's extremely cool. It's really inspirational to see the way that you saw something that you felt like you were missing out on, and you really created your whole new space and to help yourself and everyone around you as well. I think that's super cool. How do you think you became the person who you are today in terms of entrepreneurship and wanting to found this whole, like, everything that you've done so far? Like, what do you think, like, in your upbringing, the way that you grew up, how do you think you became the person you are today?
That's a really good question. And I hate when people say that if they don't think it, but it is good, because I'm thinking this reminds me of what makes you you. At my networking events, that's a question, some existential question, like, what makes you you? But I think this is one of the craziest things, because it's the thing I talk about the least, but it's one of a driving force for me, if you will. But on Instagram, you'll see my social life primarily. On LinkedIn, you'll see my professional life, where I went to school, what type of jobs I had, those type of things. But on both platforms, it has no place for me to actually talk about the adversities that I've actually faced, and I think have everything to do with why I wake up everything. It has everything to do with my why. And growing up in a poverty-stricken community, I've been homeless before. I've excuse me. Excuse me. I've been homeless before. I've lived in shelters before. And growing up in these spaces where I wasn't always, I feel like even as talented as I always felt and brilliant, I feel like I didn't always get a shot. And I feel like finding opportunities to make sure that my voice was heard, that I felt that the experiences didn't define who I was. I feel like there weren't spaces that always celebrated the challenges. I remember going to an interview and someone asking me about grit and perseverance. And I was like, well, that I can't think of a time where I wasn't pushing back against something. I can't think of a time when I wasn't protesting. In my community, there were a lot of struggles that people experience. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I think about people who look like me, and just the drugs, the violence, all of these things that had everything to do with poverty. I think about how the differentiator that really set me apart in those spaces was that, and I'm very fortunate enough to have, I've really had parents who really pushed me to achieve, and who told me, oh, you could do better than this. Like I grew up in a household where B's were bad. Like, why do you have a B? What are you not understanding? And that sounds crazy. It does, but it really pushed me to say, what is the standard? What is the standard? Where should I be competing? And I was taught that if there's an A, if there's a 100 that you can get on a test, you need to study. You need to make sure. As poverty stricken as it relates to finances, that a lot of times I felt like my community struggled with. I don't think we struggled with love, and when it comes to standards, when it comes to striving for excellence. And excellence wasn't always making an A. It was also saying, is that your best? And I had a mom who would say, is that your best? And if the answer is no, go back and do some more. And growing up in a household where my mother didn't go to college, my father didn't go to college, I felt like a representative. I felt like an ambassador. It would be, I would go to sleep thinking that a paper was good enough to be submitted. Then my mother would wake me up and say, that's not legible. I would wake up to her erasing things and saying, no, that's not, I don't understand what you're explaining in this sentence. And if I don't get it, your teacher won't get it. So I grew up in a household very much, had very high standards and very high expectations. And I lived up to what their expectations was, and began to adapt them and push back against the adversities that I faced. And also thinking about the deficit that sometimes people operate in. I felt like I was abundant in support and encouragement, and it propelled me forward. So.
That's amazing. Hearing your story, even talking to you a few days ago, it's extremely inspirational. Seeing someone like you who really pushed forward. You had so much motivation, like through yourself too. I know you say that it's from your parents, but like seeing the way that you push, and that the way that you were able to succeed anything you dreamed of, is very inspirational.
Thank you. Thank you.
What would be your advice to women in entrepreneurship who are launching their own startups now?
So as it relates to women who are launching startups, having launched right before a pandemic, we had our very first hard launch in February of 2020, and the world changed. And I would say that actually stepping into my role as the Director of Operation and Innovation at the Forward Thinkers facility, it provides this ecosystem for me to continue to grow, Connect CoLab, but also be connected to mentors. I think about Kenneth Plummer. I think about there are a few people who work out of the office who motivate me every day. They become my colleagues in that space. And I think about making sure that you're connected to the right people. And I heard some of these comments on with the earlier speakers, just about making sure you have the right mentors. I'm 34. I just celebrated my 34th birthday last month. And I think I'm in this sandwich generation where I love working with interns. I love working with people who are on their journey to grad school and transitioning beyond grad school and into their professions. So I give back in that way and try to make sure that I'm connected to people on their journey the way others were for me. But I'm also in this place too where I seek guidance. I seek mentorship. I want to learn from you. I want you to share your highs and lows so that I can make informed decisions about why I'm doing making more informed decisions about how I should grow my business, what markets I should be testing, who my clients are, who I should be sharing my Connect CoLab with. But when I think about I think it has everything to do with the support systems that you have in place. And if it's not coming from family, you definitely have to think about the family that you create, and those are your work family, your colleagues, your mentors, your coaches, your advisors, those people who you select to be in your life and who will support you. And that's absolutely critical. And I also want to share that they don't always come to you. And sometimes you have to be as explicit as, can I sit down and talk to you about my idea? Can I share it with you? And I think about Connect Collab, and I always talk to my co-founder about it, but how many no's I get before I get my yeses. I celebrate every single yes I get, because for every yes, there were like 10 no's, like, not yet. What are you doing? Like, no, doors aren't swinging open for me because various reasons they shut and they open, and I believe it has everything to do with our creator, or not yet, or not now. But yeah, you definitely have to have the right circle around you and the right support system, and you have to cultivate that squad, that crew.
Yeah, I see a lot of value in what you're saying, and I can see how that can really add a lot of power to like what you're doing if you have a very strong support system. Today we're talking all about how women can break glass ceilings and create their own, like her story. How do you suggest that men can be allies in this process in both our professional and home life to help us through any of our endeavors?
My goodness. I really think that when it comes to our male male counterparts on this journey, it is so important that we create, we embrace women who are showing up at the tables that we're sitting at. We champion the women who make their own tables and their own seats and alternative tables and whatever those look like. You show up to theirs too. That's so important. And I think being encouraging, I think sometimes coming from an oppressed group of people. I'm a Black woman. I'm Black and I'm a woman. Being able to venture out on our own and being able to celebrate our victories is really important. And seeing us as equal contributors is really important. And we live in a time where not every woman wants that. I think that's the truth of, like, some people would like the additional support or the I don't know what those views necessarily are, but I can speak for mine. But I do believe that I'm an equal contributor, and I grew up in a household where I saw even split of responsibilities and the contributions. I never doubted my abilities to deliver. And sometimes when I grew up in an environment that was so rich and you can do anything, and I was my dad's oldest, and I expect these things of you, not because you're a boy, but because you're my oldest child. And the responsibilities that were placed on me, and to go into a world that's like, I'm ready to lead, I'm ready to take over, to be met with, well, you can, but you won't be paid as much. Or go after that, but you're not going to have the type of impact I would have. And being in spaces where people really do believe that. And I think being able to push back against that, not just as a woman, but knowing that our male counterparts would too. Like, I think she's capable of leading a team. I think she's capable of earning more. I think she's capable of negotiating her own salary. Just encouraging us to have those conversations, and being able to speak up and say that this isn't right, because it's not right for anybody if anybody's treated this way. So I'm okay with championing our causes as women, but it is so important that our male counterparts push back on systems that they benefit from. People assume that you're great. People assume that you're brilliant. People assume that you should be getting paid top dollar for what you're doing. No one would ever assume that you're doing this for volunteer work. Like, assume that for me too. Let me do my volunteer work. Let me do my pro bono work when I want to do my pro bono work. But if it's not, please assume that you'll be getting an invoice in 2 weeks. Like, that's really important. That's so important. But yeah, so sharing this work with us. I would gladly welcome any of the support. Sharing this work with us to our male counterparts.
What an awesome response. I think I definitely agree with you. And I think helping women shine, especially women of color, is not just for like one person personally to support. It's like everyone has that place to be able to elevate these women of color and just like allow them to shine and let them do what they do best. And I completely agree with you. I think you put it really nicely. So it's been awesome talking to you. I hope that everyone watching had took a lot of valuable things away from what you were saying as much as I did. Our next guest speaker for the evening will be Kecia Palmer-Cousins, who will be interviewed by Miriam Muhammad, another one of Urban Legacy's team members.
Hello and welcome. I think Kecia, I'm not sure where she is. Just tell a little, oh, there she goes. Hi, Kecia.
Hi, good evening, Miriam. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I just want to say, thank you to the other panelists that were speaking previously tonight. I mean, it takes a village. So I appreciate everyone that was here tonight because everyone's voice is important.
Now, Kecia, we are going to dig right in with you because you have so much to offer, so many jewels that we all need. And we are so grateful that you are here. And we honor you as a woman during Women's Month. And I just want to say thank you. Okay. So my first question to you is mainly give everyone a little bit about what you do and just a little bit about what you do and how you got here to this point.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Kecia Palmer-Cousins, and I'm the CEO of a company called Aerobisol Incorporated. What we do is we provide resources for minority and women-owned businesses to help them grow their business. Basically, we help connect them to procurement opportunities that was mentioned. A lot of that was mentioned and talked about before. So how I got to where I was back in 1999, a fellow friend of mine, Shelly Anderson-Tazzy, used to give aerobic classes, and I was one of her participants in the class. She was a breast cancer survivor at the time. A lot of times she would have to go for her chemo and be tired, working, trying to juggle a lot of things, as all our moms, mompreneurs are always trying to juggle things. So a lot of times I would take over her aerobic classes. So because I did that, I had to then become certified as a group fitness instructor. And when I did that, I had to then organize and create a business to protect my personal assets. So back in 1999, my husband and I, he was actually my boyfriend at the time, we created Aerobisol Incorporated as a wellness business to provide wellness to two target markets that people were ignoring. Full-figure women, especially full-figure Black women, and the disabled. We all need to exercise too. So what we did was we started that business back in 1999 in my church basement over at Unity Baptist Tabernacle in Mount Vernon, New York. And then we used to also teach classes at the Yonkers Y. So that's how I started that first business that I had. And it has morphed into a wellness business for not just individuals, but for business owners. Because a lot of our clients, when we started working out with them, we would do wellness workshops with them, retreats, exercises, you name it. And as we got to talk to them, we're like, you're a business owner, so how well is your business? Because all of that is related. Mind, body, spirit, business is all related. So I became like a Iyanla Vanzant and then an Olivia Pope type of person, right? Now let me help you fix your business, right? As I fix you, let me help you fix your business. And so because I have an engineering background, I retired at the age of 49 from Verizon. I was a IT project manager. And at the time, as our previous panelists had mentioned, a lot of your corporations were downsizing this and that. But when I got my downsize ticket saying, Ms. Palmer-Cousins, you're no longer needed here, I was like, thank you. This job was getting in my way because I had already created my Aerobisol Incorporated business since 1999. I left Verizon in 2014. And I had also created and established G&K Sweet Foods with a friend of mine, Gay Willis Smith. We started G&K Sweet Foods where we manufacture thaw and serve desserts. Our signature is our sweet potato pie. So because, as I mentioned, I am an engineer by trade. I have a manufacturing engineering degree from Boston University. I also have a master's certificate in project management from George Washington University. And being the only girl with 3 brothers, my father was like, you owe me a 3rd degree. So I have an MBA in marketing from Long Island University, because my mother always says, I never want you to depend on a man. But I have a wonderful husband, Kevin Cousins, whose mother is a dynamic New York State Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins. So she raised him very right and correct, and I love him to death. And we're raising our 2 teen sons, Kendall and Kyle, in Peekskill, New York, who will also fall into our footsteps and become either engineers or physical therapists. But again, why I started that business was to help Black women get well. And then it morphed into helping Black business women and owners get their businesses well. And so I use all of that experience as being like the first, one of the first Black female field foreman that Verizon hired, which was actually New York Telephone at the time. So Verizon that you see now was New York Telephone, NYNEX, Bell Atlantic, Verizon. I survived all those mergers, okay? And it was not easy being a young, Black, educated female at a company like that was male dominated in, as you mentioned, your 3 pillars: STEM, entrepreneurship, ownership. When they saw me coming through the door, I was a threat to all of the men that worked in the construction fields at Verizon, at the cable maintenance and installation, right? So imagine I was like 20 something years old, coming in with my pink Timberlands, you know, and just saying, hey, what circus are we doing today? You know, I had guys that were like the age of my father, my grandfather. I was supervising them, right? I had to win them over, right? So I got initiated like there's nobody's business, but I can climb up a pole, I can hot wire wife, you name it. I was very glad to have my technical background. So again, what I tell women is like, don't let the glass ceiling even be there. When I started at, you know, Verizon, and then we're all owners of like owning my own business before I retired from there, I didn't let anybody get in my way. I never took no for an answer. I did all the extra work, all the dirty work that nobody wanted. That's what I did. You wanted, hey, we need a trainer. Hey, I'll do the training. And so I was building up my skills. I had them pay for a lot of my education, but I was building up skills so that this way I could take them with me. Because my parents always told me, because they were entrepreneurs themselves, no one can ever take away your education. So while I was there, I made sure that I learned as much as I could. I rotated through the different departments. And so when I became my full-time entrepreneur with my own businesses, I knew I had the skills to survive, right? And I use those skills to this day. And I tell people all the time, don't just think about your business. You need to mind your business, right? That means like understanding about branding, about marketing, about networking, about mentoring, about giving back, because I give back a lot. I serve on a lot of boards throughout Westchester County. I serve on the board of Feeding Westchester. I am the civic engagement chair for the Peekskill NAACP and also second vice president. I'm vice president of the Peekskill Youth Bureau. I am also on the board for the Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce. And I also am chapter historian for my Mid-Hudson Valley chapter of Jack and Jill of America. And also, I like to relax and chill and read a good book. So I'm the chapter facilitator for my Go On Girl book club here in Westchester. So while I mentioned all that to say, those are all opportunities where I give back to the community, to youth, to women, to men, right? And so I use all my skill sets to help those organizations and those in my community be better. Because once I'm a better person, they're a better person. It's all about each one teach one.
Wow. And you know what, everything that you said, I have this hanging up on my wall. Be the change you wish to see in the world, right? And I truly feel like you are the perfect example of that. You know what you want to see, and you are in the position willingly to make that change. So my next question, you mentioned a lot about your parents and how much they impacted you, and your children, and what things like that. I have a question. What
Okay.
would you, and this is for the parents out there who are in our audience, what would you tell our parents? How can we teach our children at an early age entrepreneurship versus, okay, get a degree, go to college, get a job? There are other options. How do we do that?
Okay. You show them, like, my parents were entrepreneurs. My mother, like I said, I had three brothers and myself. When my mother was a nurse's aide working in the workplace, she had to end up leaving the workplace because there was no maternal, rights as we have now, right? Maternity care and maternity leave and all that other stuff. So she had to become an entrepreneur. She became a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years, and what she did was she sold Tupperware, Avon lady. She ended up creating and opening a daycare center in our own house, right? We had like 10 to 15 children in our house. So she became an entrepreneur, right? So how can parents show their kids? You can become an entrepreneur yourself in whatever passion or skill set you have. My father, before he became disabled, he was a sanitation worker during the week, 9 to 5. On the weekends, he had a pickup truck and he had Palmer moving business, right? So he would help move people's furniture, etc. on the weekend. So I grew up, with my father having a moving business, a home-based business, and my mother having a daycare center, right? Those are my parents. I saw them create businesses. And they had us help out as well. So if you are a parent and you have a child that has an idea about something that he loves or she loves, they want to babysit. They want to build things. They want to bake cookies. They want to do whatever, right? They want to give advice. I used to think that I was like that character Lucy and the Peanuts. I was like, okay. I used to have a desk, and all my friends in the neighborhood would come by. Yes, I need some advice, Kecia. And so I was envisioning my future, right? And what I wanted to do. And so parents need to listen to their children, with whatever type of idea it is, whether it's crazy or not. Listen to them and help them cultivate them and help them just become what they want to see. Because they see it for themselves. Because so many times parents become like dream squashes, right? You may say, oh, I want to become an actress. And someone may say, you know what? You can't act, you can't sing. And that just squashes their dream right away, right? And then it's like maybe 50 years later, someone says, oh, you know what? I always wanted to act on Broadway, right? So don't let anybody ever steal your dream, but your parents can be your dream makers as well and empower you to be all that you can be. So they can help you, just encourage that passion that you have by helping you to practice it and introducing you to someone who already is doing that. So you can say, hey, you know what? I think I might want to own a business one day. I may want to own a grocery store. Well, maybe introduce you to the person who owns that grocery store in your neighborhood and let have your parent help you shadow them. It's called walk in my shoes, right? When I was a Girl Scout, when I was in high school, I went to a retreat, and that retreat was at AT&T, where we got to walk around AT&T and see all the circuits and wires. And you know what? That's probably the reason why I went into the STEM field, because I was exposed to that when I was in high school. So I saw, technicians, I saw managers playing around building things. So engineers build things to life. And so maybe that's where I picked it up from. I always liked math and science. But again, we have to encourage the dreams of our children and help them with that.
Absolutely. And thank you. That is crucial that we encourage our children, especially in times like we're in now. So the next question I want to ask you is a little bit about young people. What would you tell someone who maybe is 13, she has a chapstick business. She's selling chapstick off the books to her friends and neighbors, and she has a good, fan base. She wants to take her business to the next level. How do you speak to them? What do you suggest regarding government contracting, so on and so forth?
Okay, so if she's 13, she's a minor, right? but what she can do is right now, as you mentioned, she's already trying to sell her products to her friends. So your product or service is your brand, right? So what she should do, and what I'm sure she is doing, is make sure that she produces the best quality, you said chapstick, that she can. So this way, when she starts selling it to her friends, she's going to make sure she uses the best quality products. She's going to make sure it's labeled, because it's very important to label everything so people will know, like if she gives it to someone and sells it to someone, make sure that her name is on there, her contact information, so someone can know where to buy it themselves, right? And in this age of social media, she can have like a website or, whatever, Instagram, whatever. But then also too, trying to connect with someone who has, like say for instance, she has a small business, reach out and try to research someone who's doing the same thing she's doing, but on another level. Reach out to like a makeup business, right? And try to maybe, be subcontracted to them, like, pitch her business to them. Hey, I have these products. Maybe I can put some of my chapstick on your shelf at your store or at an event you're having, because a lot of big businesses, especially government agencies, want to nurture, right, entrepreneurs who are like on the smaller scale. And how they get to the bigger scale when she becomes a little bit older, when she what she can do is with her business, she can try to go get MWBE certified. And what is that, you say? MWBE stands for Minority Women Business Enterprise. And the Department of Small Business Services in New York City, they have what they call a New York City MWBE certification program, a certification where a person who owns a business, whether you're a sole proprietor, which is like a person who owns their business, or a LLC, which could be a person who has their business, but their business is under a business legal entity where if somebody tries to sue them, they'll sue the business, not you and your personal assets, okay? And then they can get incorporated. But the bottom line is it is a program where you get certified, you fill out an application, and you include some supporting documents such as, a resume, such as your New York State filing receipt, such as your proof of U.S. citizenship. It's a whole list of documents you provide. But the key is this New York City MWBE certification gets you access and opportunities to get like set asides that over 62 agencies in New York City, such as the police department, the fire department, the Department of the Aging, the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, Department of Youth and Community Development, they spend money. There's billions of dollars, over $17 billion New York City spends on goods and services like chapstick for their clients. And so 30% of all of that money, at least $25 million have to be spent with minority and women-owned businesses. And how they find you is you go through this certification called New York City MWBE certification, and then you are listed in a directory with over 10,000 other New York City MWBE certified businesses so that agencies can find you. So if you have a person who's sitting at their desk at an agency one day and wants to spend money with someone, they want to buy anything such as chapstick, such as chairs, such as whatever you provide, they can go to this directory and then they can research and look up you. And if you're certified, you'll be found there. As I mentioned, I have two businesses, right? So my other business, the NFL use this directory. Again, it's New York City NYC MWBE directory, right? Go check it out. The NFL checked it out, and they Googled list and sent out emails to every single minority and women-owned business on that list back in 2013 to invite them to get a piece of the pie and be part of the Super Bowl that was in New York City that was in New Jersey, at MetLife Stadium in 2014. And so G&K Sweet Foods, we were able to serve over 1,500 of our signature miniature 3-inch sweet potato pies at the Super Bowl. So did we get a contract directly with the NFL? No. What we did was we subcontracted to an event planning business that did get a contract with the NFL, and they subcontracted to us. So your 13-year-old entrepreneur can also subcontract out with a bigger company, so she's not responsible for a whole contract, but just a piece of it, right? And I encourage her to keep going after it, you know? And if she lives in Westchester County has a program called Business Launch 100 or 1000 or something like that, where she can go take some courses with this Westchester County entity. And then at the end of it, they give you $5,000 to then invest in your dream to scale up your business. Okay. Wow. So you go to the Westchester, I think it's westchestercounty.gov. Look under Westchester Catalyst and you find Business Launch 1000 or whatever to actually find out more information. Okay.
Kecia, thank you.
Yes.
It sounds like we're going to have to do part 2, Kecia, because you were just so resourceful. So I want to get into asking about PPP funding, but we have a question that came in from Leanne Redwood.
Yes.
She's asking, what advice do you give to a 22-year-old student about to graduate and eager to work? I have been networking and applying everywhere, but I feel discouraged sometimes.
Okay, what I would say is I have been in your shoes, okay? Do not be discouraged. I remember being your age, graduating from engineering school, and I went to Boston University, coming back home to New York, and I was like, oh, I got this degree, I'm looking for work, and they were like, but you have no engineering experience. I'm like, are you kidding me? So as my father would say, fake it till you make it, right? So what I did was I ended up working at a bank, right? I ended up actually working at the same bank that Shane's aunt worked at. So I met his aunt Helena at the bank. I took temp assignments until I was able to get kicked through the door and get an engineering job that I wanted at a huge company. What you can do, what I would advise you to do, because now you have social media, you have LinkedIn, I would, whatever type of company you want to get into, I would start following that company. I would use LinkedIn to connect and tell everyone that you know, hey, my name is Leanne, I'm looking for a job in such and such industry. They have different professional organizations that you can join called Chambers of Commerce, where guess what? Different organizations, corporations, business owners, nonprofit organizations, you name it. They are members of so many of these chambers of commerce. You can join the Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce, Business Council of Westchester, New York Women's Chamber of Commerce. The list goes on and on. But what you can do is connect with the Chamber of Commerce. And a lot of times you don't even have to join them, right? I know money may be tight, so you don't even have to join them. Just go to some of their events. And right now, a lot of their events are virtual. So imagine you go to, like, say, an event that's sponsored by the Business Council of Westchester, where like almost every large corporation is a member of. You attend the event, like you're doing now, Facebook Live. You ask a question. You can go to the directory of all of these organizations, these chambers, and you can see who are members of these chambers. And they have their contact information there, right? That's like golden. So you start, you get your phone, you start pitching yourself to these people, okay? It's gold in those lists.
Yeah. So it sounds like we have to do the research. That's a part of getting to this level. So we want to discuss, if you can briefly touch upon PPP.
Right. So the loans?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened is, again, we know, unfortunately, we're still living through this COVID time. So what happened was the government last year said, you know what, we need to help these small and huge, large corporations too. They got in trouble too, okay, as we saw. So last year, because due to COVID, a lot of companies were not allowed to open up the doors of their business. They had to downsize their staff, etc. The government said, you know what, we're going to come out with these loans, right? And we're going to collaborate with local banks that will distribute these loans to those in need. But what happened was last year, a lot of the businesses, and again, when you are a business owner, you have to mind your business, which means getting your paperwork in order. Because so many of us have businesses, and when you start your business and create it as a legal entity, you must pay your taxes, okay? And you should start trying to pay yourself payroll of some sort, just some amount of money. Because what happened was, as many companies tried to apply for these loans last year, as you mentioned, they were denied, because if you cannot show proof of how you keep track of your business, your revenues, your expenses, etc., how are they going to trust you with taking out one of those PPL loans to then keep your business in business? Okay. So last year it was a rude awakening for a lot of companies, because they had to, again, I do a lot of counseling with companies, coaching one-on-one with them, and I help them to organize their business. Like, for instance, a lot of people said, well, I only have one employee. Last year, you could have applied for an EIDL loan, which was like a loan advance, $1,000 you could have applied for, right? Just if you show proof that you were the only employee for your company, and you at least process payroll for yourself, right? Those who did not process payroll for themselves did not get a lot of those PPL loans that were available. Okay, so now a lot of folks turned around and said, you know what? I need to start organizing my paperwork, and I also need to start walking into the banks to establish myself relationship-wise, right? Because a lot of people with these loans that they were applying for, they had no relationship with a bank in their community. They did not have a bank checking account in their business name, only in their personal name. And people should not mix business with personal. Okay. So if we learned anything last year, was like, relationships are key, right? And there's so many banks around physically you can walk into. There's banks online. It's all about establishing a relationship with those banks, and how you can connect with them too. It's just by walking in the door and talking with the bank branch manager, right? And starting to open up an account with how much little money you have. But you got to start somewhere. Okay, you got to start somewhere.
Wow, I totally just feel, I don't know how everyone else feels in the audience here, but I feel like I just went to business school 101 in 60 seconds. Okay. Wow. Thank you. I feel like we're going to need you again. You have
and I'll be back.
Information. We are so grateful for you and all of our guest speakers who took the time out to be here today to celebrate us as women and what we can do and accomplish in this lifetime. Okay.
Yeah.
So Thank you. And now what we're going to do is introduce our Urban Legacy team members, and we're going to talk a little bit about why we decided to join Urban Legacy Foundation. So if Shivi, you want to start, that would be great.
I can start off. I mean, I'm only really a high school student right now. I'm a junior in high school, and Urban Legacy really just like drew me in just because of how specific and direct their goals were. Like Miriam said in the beginning, their 3 pillars are entrepreneurship, ownership, and STEM, which are 3 fields, especially as a woman, I feel there is a lot of lacking in, because those are predominantly male-dominated fields. And even today, like, it's Women's History Month, like those are fields that not only like women are like need more representation in, especially people of color. And I love how Urban Legacy has those direct goals and such a powerful message behind it. And the way that they execute all of their actions is extremely like direct and really trying to build on those 3 pillars. And all the work that Urban Legacy does, even from having these events, which are super resourceful I know for me, and I'm sure for all of my other hosts, as well as anyone watching, you learn so much just from having those conversations, from all of the other events that Urban Legacy holds in terms of the different camps for and like different learning sessions for younger people of color, and they're just really trying to help everyone, which I think is awesome and very, very beneficial. I don't know. There's Urban Legacy is amazing and just has awesome goals. So there's literally nothing that I can say that, like, Urban Legacy does everything.
No, I definitely joined Urban Legacy early in the game, and I, like, because STEM is something that's extremely important, especially to our president. I wanted to also, like, me personally, because I'm in entertainment, I wanted to bring the fact that, like, even though we're talking about technology and math and engineering and all of the in science, I wanted to be able to show people that, like, you don't have to just be the artist. There is a whole team around that artist. There's a whole team around that artist that is more tech involved than anything. That's like when we go to a concert and we watch the artist, there is so much that goes into that as far as, like, the sound and, and also making sure that everything is correct for the show that we get to see. So I wanted to make sure that we almost expanded on what we think of as, as STEM, because it involves everything, even, like, the things that people don't think about. And also, like we talked about earlier, like, as one of the speakers and hosts talked about, you have to be the change that you want to see. So, and I feel like Urban Legacy is really an organization that wants to see change at all levels, not just, like, working with kids, but also working with, people who are presently going through, because sometimes it's kind of hard to see the return on kids because it takes so long, or even if it doesn't take long, it's still to see their, like, full potential. It takes some time because they need time to grow. But, I feel like definitely we also are trying to help people that are, in their 20s and in their 30s. And because, we're trying to break generational curses out here. So in order to do that, we have to, be the change.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up, being the change. Interestingly enough, I've known Shane, the president, since from high school. And when he had told me about his foundation, immediately I was ready. I said, you tell me and I'm ready when you tell me. And the reason being, honestly, is I've worked with youth for many, many years. Since I was a youth at the age of 14, I started volunteering in the Boys and Girls Club. I grew up in, if some of you know, in New Rochelle, City Park, Fifth Avenue area, and for about 14 years. And seeing the things I saw, I knew that something was wrong. I knew that I was not being taught everything I needed to learn in school. And so when I started working with young people, one of the things I had asked when I was teaching a college readiness course was, I said, guys, we can also be entrepreneurs. Is there anyone in here? Raise your hand if you want to be an entrepreneur, right? We had about 20 or so kids. And I was actually 100% shocked to see that no one knew what that was, right? So at first I'm like, maybe they're joking with me because they like to play with me. I'm like, this has got to be a joke. And I was almost brought to tears realizing that they've never even heard the word entrepreneur, right? It's like, I have to go to school, I have to get my degree, and I have to get a job and work for someone, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. However, we need to know what options are out there, right? So when I, had the opportunity to be a part of something, in my opinion, that was actually doing something a little bit more than what I have seen, I was so grateful, and I still am. And so we're looking forward to amazing things in the future. We have an amazing team, Shivy and Jay, the president, Shane, our chairman, Brandon. I mean, we meet literally all of the time, every single week, just to think of ways where we can help, the young people. We can help ourselves and, you know, the people of color who need to just open up our, you know, horizons and open up our world to the possibilities that are endless. Okay, so we just want to thank everyone who was on this call. I am so grateful that we had this opportunity once more. We are here tonight and we celebrated womanhood. Okay, so thank you, and everyone have a wonderful evening.